Hello and welcome to Frank's School. 6th year, 13th day, first video. And in the last video, I called it Getting the Real World Back. And I was talking about our relationship with clocks and calendars and time, and it all came of my attacking a brand name on my shirt. Related to that, I wanted to say, I had the word bells on there, and I didn't say anything about it. Well, and sort of an intermediate time between our now almost being slaves to the minute. There was a time where bells in a village or in a whole surrounding area, you could have an idea of time by bells. And at St. Paul's School in Concord, New Hampshire, I went to public school, but in the summer, twice, I spent some weeks, 6 weeks I think, studying German at the private school. It was kind of a special thing to open their doors to public school kids. And on the campus at St. Paul's School, a gorgeous, just gorgeous campus in its way. It seemed like it's in England, not the United States. But anyway, there was that system. I think you called it a carillon. And you could tell there was a tune, dun 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 dun, that's 15 minutes. Dun 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 dun, that's 30, half hour. Dun 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 dun. That was quarter to or 45 minutes, and then it would play the whole tune at the hour, and the big bell would then bong out the twice if it were 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you knew the time. Now in Lisbon, of all places, a big city where I've stayed 4 times, I think it is. It's near the Alfama, and the city gets so quiet in that part where the streets are too narrow for cars that you very clearly hear the big bell at the monastery on the hour. But then they stop in the middle of the night, so it doesn't wake people up, and then starts again about 6 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't give the whole carillon. Well, anyway, I wanted to explain about that. Yeah, a cool system. I mean, if I had somebody just saying, "Hey, I got a system like that for you. You want it on your farm?" I said, "Yeah, I'll take it." Anyway, my subject today is tragic. There were 2 deaths in this neighborhood. A baby goat. You say lost. I lost one of triplets. And then my neighbor Josh, he was here, and he said he lost the calf, meaning they died. And why? Well, it had very much to do with this blizzard, late blizzard that we had. The weather was brutal for March, and it caused the tragedy of high winds, extremely cold for March, and not a good time for mothers to be having babies. And Josh, he told me about his calf before I went back down to my barn, and found that here, surprisingly, one of the does had her babies. It caught me by surprise. I was trying to watch. I knew it'd be sometime, but I didn't know it was imminent. And anyway, Josh had said, "What can you do? When you get weather like that?" And I thought about that. His question was rhetorical. He didn't expect an answer. It's just sort of fatalistic. What can you do? I'll come back to that in just a second. But in my own experience, the mother had 2 of the kids, and then went into another stall where she had the 3rd. Well, the 3rd was fine. But that happens with goats, and I think sheep sometimes they don't have time, or they forget to go back to the first one that they had when you've got twins, and especially triplets. And those 2 that she had not attended to yet had gotten so cold. And I realized as soon as I picked them up, I saw them laying there, I thought they were dead. But I picked them up and I realized, no, they weren't dead yet, but they were cold. And I got the one to the mother, and the other that was colder, I ended up taking it over by the furnace where I had a fire in the furnace, so there was a warm spot. And ultimately, I put the baby under my coat, sitting by the furnace to warm it up. I felt a little bit like Gabriel Oakes in the opening chapter of Far from the Madding Crowd. It was not an uncommon thing to do among shepherds to try to get those babies warm. Well, anyway, by morning, I got it warmed up and under the mother, but by morning, it was dead, and the other two were okay, but it was a struggle. So anyway, that was my experience. Tragic. But anyway, when Josh said, "What can you do?" Well, as I say, it was rhetorical, but it had me thinking there is an answer to that. And I almost had the answer myself to prevent my baby goat from dying. I had been in that space all day, and I had been keeping a fire in a furnace in the corner where I was working, because down there is a kitchen in the making with a big fireplace, and there is a workshop with a functioning furnace, even on a really windy day. And by being there and working there, I was also all the time being aware of what was going on with the animals. It was so cold and windy that I didn't let them go out at all, even the horse. So in there were my goats and the horse, and all kind of together. But I left for about an hour or two to come up to the house to warm myself up a little bit more and also to eat. And then after talking to Josh, I was already in my jammies. I put coats on and stuff, and I went down, and here's what I found. But anyway, what can you do? Well, there was a time when people and their animals lived together. So when you had a brutal storm like that, or any kind of weather, you knew what your animals were doing. You were sharing the shelter, and the animals helped the people by sharing their warmth. In many ways, it was more important for the people than the animals, because cows are mostly, they're okay out in the field. But Josh and David, their barn had burned about 2 years before, a short circuit on an electrical heater to keep the water from freezing. And so, and that's not cruel. I mean, it's a perfectly normal thing around here anyway for cattle, and I think all over the U.S. and maybe the modern world now, for cattle to be out. They don't have barns. They don't actually have to have barns, but this was extreme. But anyway, there was a time where the death of his calf and the death of my kid would have been prevented if we had been there and if we had known. And in Josh's case, if they had had that better shelter. Well, getting the real world back. See, the real world, if you think that I'm just pie in the sky and this was, it's so pretty and so romantic about life on a farm, it's a hard life. That's not the case, but it's real. So the real world also has its tragedies. Anyway, if you would like to have a look at what I'm talking about, I really recommend to you this video, but I would look at both of them, because in Detmold, the largest open air museum in Germany, which I visited with my friends the Hawklings, the Hall House, they called it. I think they also called it the Smoke House because it was so full of smoke at the time. But at Osnabrück was brought to Detmold and reconstructed. And there, it was the first, I think it was opening day there, and I was, or nearly opening day, and there was nobody in there, and I filmed details of the inside of a Hall House. And there, with a little imagination, or with none, you can see, well, I guess it takes imagination. You can imagine what that kind of world was like, with the cows, the horses, the hired hands, the maid, the family, extended family, young and old, all under one giant roof. So I'll give the links. I really recommend that you take a look at that, because it is it was a real world for hundreds of years, and a very different world from what most modern day people can imagine. Bye for now.